Welcome Divanauts to Cronista de Indias, the YouTube channel dedicated to Latin American studies by Dr. Andrea Lorena Fernandez. Follow on Instagram for more cultural content throughout the week. I am back to last week's classroom at Baruch College's vertical campus because it is empty at the very moment that I need to record, so this is going to be a recurrent setting for us. Today is October 10, 2018, and I'm already wearing my Halloween costume because I can't wait to be a cat for Halloween. And like my cat López he's always happy to be himself, so I'm going to wear this until Halloween and probably until November because it's so freaking cute. In the last episode 20 of Season 1, De Pelonas or Chicas Modernas from 1900 to 1959, we reviewed three things: Latin American feminisms, first wave and second waves in three periods from the 1880s to 1959, the interbellum and the Mexican Revolution as motivators for the development of the pelona, or the woman who wears her hair short, as changes of femininity in the 20th century, and number 3, we talked about the characteristics and tensions of the pelonas and chicas modernas, modern women versus conservative women. Today's episode 21, is titled Sufragistas Part 1, María Abella Ramírez, in Basic Plan for a Vindication of the Rights of Women, 1904. In here we're going to review 4 sections. Number 1, María Abella Ramírez's contributions to the collective feminist movement. Number 2, suffrage and the first wave feminism. Is it cultural imperialism, since it's a product of Europhilia, or being obsessed with everything European? We're going to review the influence of the rights of men, Mayor Wollstonecraft, and the Declaration of Sentiments within the Latin American context. Number 3, we're going to see the context of first wave growing into second wave feminism from 1900 to 1960, to note that this is a gradual transition for Latin America, more so than it was for the European or USA counterparts. And last, we're going to read some notes by Francesca Miller in Latin American Women and the Search for Social Justice, one of the seminal books from 1991 on the subject, where the scholar explains why suffrage came later for Latinas than it did for their sisters in the USA and Great Britain. So let's go to topic number 1, María Abella Ramírez's contributions to the collective movement. In 1902, María Abella founds the magazine Nosotras in Uruguay and Argentina. It is a vanguard journal with serial publications, a proponent of full civil gender equality is most of the articles in the magazine, and they also propose secular education. For the next few decades, this magazine Nosotras will be a regular publication for women to read, not only in Uruguay and Argentina, but they will be snuck around throughout the continent as well. In 1906, María Abella Ramírez participates in the International Conference on the Free Thought in Buenos Aires, which is where the document that we're going to talk about today, where it was read and performed for the first time. And in this International Congress, they seek to reform women's status within the home and family, and they have a public controversy with regards to Catholic conservative values, so they are arguing against the Catholic Church. In 1908, María Abella also participates in the first International Feminist Congress of Argentina, attended by more than 1,000 women. This is a huge turnout for a very early period of the first wave feminism, and they attempted to create a women's network to overcome class and ideology in supporting literacy, economic independence, and suffrage. Between 1928 and 1940, María Abella Ramírez is a founding member of the Inter-American Commission on Women. It is the first intergovernmental organization on women's issues in the Americas, and the organization is still active, so you can check out their website. I'll probably leave it in the comments below. Step 2 for this lesson is suffrage. Is first wave feminism cultural imperialism? Argentina, at the turn of the last century, the 1900s, is basically Britain's backyard in the from the early independence period of the 1830s to World War II, so 1940s. Note how both of these countries love polo, soccer, and Shakespeare. María Abella Ramírez actually gives the speech, The Basic Plan for a Vindication of the Rights of Women, at the International Conference on free thought in Buenos Aires in 1906, and it performs like a Jeffersonian laundry list. For example, here are some of the tenets. 1. Equal physical, moral, and intellectual education for both sexes. 2. That all professions practiced by men be open and also to women. 3. That all areas of public service, women be admitted as employees with the same salary as under the same conditions as men. This hasn't worked out for us, girls. I'm still missing 28 cents, y'all. According to Sarah Ashley O'Brien in CNN Money, I'm missing 28 cents out of my $1 paycheck. 6. A woman's basic physical, moral, and intellectual needs should not have to depend on the greater or lesser generosity of her husband. 10. That a mother's parental rights and authority be equal to that of the father's, and that these not be abrogated if she chooses to remarry. 11. Absolute divorce. Wait, what? This is 1906. Dun dun dun. Alright, so she's asking for absolute divorce requiring the consent of just one of the two partners, out of respect for human freedom and dignity. Once divorced, the father should remain obligated to support his children and the mother to care for them. Okay, you're saying, now we're treading on radical territory. This is 1906, but wait for it, because title number 16 is where the kick is at. 16. That prostitution be tolerated but not regulated. The single adult woman is a free sovereign individual. Her body belongs exclusively to her, and she may do with it as she pleases, without having to pay taxes or suffer the abuse from police. Wow, that prostitution be tolerated but not regulated. That's pretty radical. And the most radical item on the list is actually number 17. This one caused the most scandal. Full political rights for the Argentine women citizens. Okay. So here are some of the novelties. Number one, higher education. 2, equal opportunity employment. 3, comparative salaries to men. 4, economic independence from husband. 5, child custody and support, one-party consensual divorce. 6, deregulated prostitution and body autonomy. And by 7, full political rights. She means women's enfranchisement or the right to the ballot. So a lot of these early feminist documents are criticized by the opponents, by either conservative women or men in the patriarchy, for being Europhilic, meaning that they are borrowing from Europe without any consideration for Latin America's cultural specificity. And technology actually facilitates communication between cities like Buenos Aires and abroad. Let's move on to topic number 3. The sources for María Abella Ramírez's list emerged from the USA and Europe, mainly The Rights of Man, Mary Wollstonecraft, and the Declaration of Sentiments. So Jefferson and Company redact the Declarations of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen in 1789 surrounding the French Revolution. It is the beginning of human and civil rights. We talk about natural rights, which are universal. It comes off as a catalog of format typical of declarations, treatises, and manifestos. So just like María Abella Ramírez, who numbers her requirements for the vindication of the rights of women, this is sourced from Jeffersonian laundry lists. In Jefferson's The Rights of Men, we use judicial language with taboo language to avoid moral objections. Corrupt governments arguably rob men of their natural, inalienable, and sacred rights to be equal to one another. We talk about deism versus the U.S. version where God entitles. And we have more of a preoccupation in the rights of men with execution without trials, even distribution of taxes, and holding leaders accountable because of the reign of terror in Paris. You may remember this from guillotines from 1793 to 4. The second source for María Abella Ramírez is Mary Wollstonecraft in A Vindication of the Rights of Woman from 1792. Note that this comes on the heels of The Rights of Man. Mary is trying to correct the blatant omission of women from these Enlightenment documents. She says, women only appear inferior to men by lacking education. We are natural learners and do so on our own accord, but it is insufficient to not provide us with books. All human beings are rational. Educated women are essential to the common good, but without reform, they won't believe themselves deserving of this education. Lastly, Mary compares women to soldiers because both are trained to please without hesitation. They take prejudices at face value and submit to authority, and both are kept blind to reason to serve the powerful. The third document that María Abella Ramírez references in her list, Vindication of the Rights of Feminism, is Lucretius Mott's and Elizabeth Cady Stanton Declaration of Sentiments from 1848. This document emerges from a women's rights convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. The women were denied a speech at the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London for being women in 1840, so they formed their own team and did one in Seneca Falls where they created the document, the Declaration of Sentiments, and it is the inception of the women's suffrage movement in the United States. However, the North American sisters have to wait until 1920, that's the 19th Amendment, to get the right to access the ballot box. So the Declaration of Sentiment looks a lot like the USA's Declaration of Independence. Here are some of the quotes that it cites. 1. He has not ever permitted her to exercise her inalienable right to the elective franchise. 2. He has compelled her to submit to laws in the formation of which she had no voice. Somebody just tried to walk into the room, but just walk right out. I need a room of my own, said Virginia Woolf. Okay. He has made her, if married, in the eyes of the law, civilly dead. And last, he has made her morally and irresponsibly being, as she can commit many crimes with impunity, provided they be done in the presence of her husband. In the covenant of marriage, she is compelled to promise obedience to her husband, he becoming, to all intents and purposes, her master, the law giving him power to deprive her of liberty and to administer chastisement. Let's go to the next topic in the lesson, the context of the first wave and second wave feminism from 1900 to 1960s. Note that for Latin America, this is a gradual transition. In the early 1900s, increased female literacy, radio, and railroads led women's or international organizations and congresses, led to women's congress and organizations. They focus on women's limited roles, rights, and status versus progress and inclusion into the urban workforce. Industrialization actually increased government jobs for women as administrators and secretaries. European immigrants arriving in America en masse mean more urban workers with Marxist, socialist, and anarcho-syndicalist ideas that pass into feminism. Expansion of public education means that more and more women are joining the workforce as professionals like teachers, doctors, lawyers, and vocational schools. Middle-class women cease to be chaperoned in public spaces, meaning you could walk around without your aunt holding your hand all the time. Note that the feminist movement is an urban middle upper class suffragist that seems modest by today's standard. There is a tacit acceptance of separate spheres between men and women. They avoided challenging male dominance of politics. There is non-militancy and change with negotiation rather than revolution. These early suffragists justified female enfranchisement in three ways. One, they said that motherhood meant that women have to teach future generations. Two, they perceived women as having superior morality and better able to make decisions for the common good than their male counterparts. Three, women already serve society with self-abnegation. In these two movements between first wave and second wave, here are the commonalities. We want suffrage, education, health care for children and women, and eventually, towards the late 1950s, we want contraception and protection against domestic violence. Francesca Miller in Latin American Women and the Search for Social Justice, published in 1991, explains why suffrage came later for Latin American women than it did for their North American and British sisters. She says, quote, "First, most Latin American lived in countries where there was no history of effective male suffrage and no legacy of reform achieved at the ballot box. Social and economic concerns dominated the discussions of the various women's congresses. The issue of women's rights to vote was generally introduced to the agenda as part of the Socialist Women's Platform, which called for universal suffrage of both sexes. Second, Latin American feminists by no means agreed on the value of the vote to the cause, and we're done with the quote, but here are some of the declarations that they might have had. Some women equated the disenfranchisement with women's natural social infancy. Women saw themselves as children, much like the way Mary Wollstonecraft says that if you don't get education, you don't feel yourself deserving of it. Two, other women sought female suffrage to enact reformist legislation. So they thought if women could vote, then we can gradually change the whole of society. Three, others equated politics with corrupt men and wanted nothing to do with it. So some women said, no, this is men's realm, it's too corrupt, we can't have any of it for ourselves. And fourth, a last group thought that women were too conservative and would endanger the feminist movement if they were given access to the ballot box. What an odd thing. So in conclusion, in episode 21 of Latin American Divas, titled Sufragistas Part 1, María Abella Ramírez' Basic Plan for Vindication of the Rights of Women, from 1904, we studied María Abella Ramírez' contribution to the collective movement. We talk about suffrage and first-wave feminism as being a form of Europhilia, perhaps cultural imperialism stemming from the French Revolution, Mary Wollstonecraft, and the Declaration of Sentiments in the United States. We talk about the context of the growth between first wave and second wave feminism from 1900 to 1960s, noting that this is a very gradual transition for Latinas. And last, we explain this gradual transition using Francesca Miller's Latin American Women and the Surge for Social Justice from 1991, where the author explains that it was slower progress for Latin Americans and why it was so. In the next episode, 22, Sufragistas Part 2, Doctora Ernestina López, we study the keynote speech at Argentina's First International Women's Congress of 1910. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about Latin American divas right here at Cronista de Indias, where new episodes drop whenever I have a chance and a room of my own to record. Please hit the subscribe button so no matter when I manage to upload one, you never miss an episode. And as always, many, many million thanks for viewing, liking, sharing the episodes. Hashtag do epic shit, girls and guys, and gender non-conforming. Just do epic shit. And wear cat ears. Have a wonderful day.